Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the Lemon Chiffon Pie.
That is an odd sponsor.
It actually comes from the story this time.
You mean a pie committed a crime?
Hardly. You see, this story is so bad, the only good thing about it is the bakery.
I see.
I'm sure you don't.
An anniversary party is going on at the Brown household around the corner. One of the guests, George Taylor, pauses while eating his dessert to say,
Best lemon chiffon pie I've ever tasted, Mary.
Oh, really?
I wish my wife could do as well.
Oh, thank you.
Say, it doesn't look as if Sam is appreciating it much, though.
Goodness, dear, is my cooking that bad? Sam, your head's practically in your plate. I guess he's fallen asleep every night. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Sam, sit up. Oh, it's dreadful. I'd better shake him. Sam!
Great guns, he's dead. How do you do? I'm Sergeant Barker, the Homicide Division.
Oh.
He's one of my boys, Mike Grady. Where's the body?
In the dining room at the table. We didn't move him.
I might as well be comfortable, everybody. This'll take just a little while. Dead, all right. Peaceful, too. Who's Mrs. Sam Brown?
I am.
And do you mind telling me what happened?
I guess not. I'm so shocked I don't know where to begin or what to tell you.
Well, you might as well begin by telling me what you served for dinner.
Well, we had soup first.
Soup? What kind?
Mushroom, then roast chicken, green peas, mashed potatoes, dessert, and coffee. But I don't see how this could mean anything.
Just routine, Mrs. Brown. Did Mr. Brown eat everything?
Yes, he did. He seemed to fall asleep over his coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tried to wake him, I found he'd had a heart attack.
Yeah. That'll be all for a few minutes, Mrs. Brown. We want to take a look around. Notice anything about this table, Mike?
No, Chief, I can't say as I do.
Yeah, neither do I. Let's look in this kitchen here. An orderly person, isn't she? Stacked the dishes after each course.
Yes, and here's the silverware over here. Look, Chief. One of these soup spoons has turned black.
Black? Let me see it. And the only spoon that's tarnished, too. Well, I was beginning to think it was a heart attack or a perfect murder, but this silver soup spoon is evidence enough. Mrs. Brown?
Yes, Sergeant Parker?
I'm sorry to interrupt your little party, Mrs. Brown, but I'm sure your guests won't mind.
I don't understand.
You will, Mrs. Brown, you will. You see, you're under arrest for the murder of your husband.
Do you know why Sergeant Barker accused Mrs. Brown of murder? In a moment, we'll hear the solution. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Well, that was really bad. Not only did we have a murder, but the guests and the wife didn't seem to mind the dead body at the table.
I guess the party must go on.
I guess. Do you get the tarnished spoon thing?
Well, some mushrooms can cause you to be dead. Perhaps the husband was a recipient of some tainted mushroom soup.
That makes sense. By the way, why did the fungi leave the party?
I know not why.
There wasn't mushroom.
And now, back to our story.
Sergeant Barker, how do you know it was homicide?
Well, Mrs. Brown took careful pains to wash the soup pans and soup dishes before she served the rest of the meal.
Yes, I can see that.
But she forgot one thing, to wash the silver soup spoons. What she didn't realize was that an hour later, by the end of dinner, the spoon her husband had used to eat his toadstool soup would give her away. She didn't know that toadstools make silver turn black. Mrs. Brown almost committed the perfect murder, but she forgot to wash one spoon.
Well, she killed her husband at a dinner party.
Not a great plan, I should think.
If only she had washed that spoon.
Actually, that is an old wives' tale.
I figured as mush.
More puns?
One more. Why was the mushroom arrested?
Why?
For stalking.
What's that you said?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Well, time is really tight today. We have an extra long and special These Are Your Stories, so let's say we get right to the show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? Another Fine Myth, Myth Adventures, Book 1. This is one of my favorite stories. Myth Adventures is a fantasy series created by Robert Asprin. The novels are noted for their whimsical nature, myriad of characters, and liberal use of puns. After this first book, every title turns on the similarity between the word myth and the prefix miss. The first book was actually titled Another Fine Mess and played on the Oliver Hardy's often used catchphrase, "This is another fine mess you've gotten me into." Later, Asprin decided that using myth would be much better if the book were to become a series, which it did. He changed the title, and a wonderful collection of stories was born. The main character is Skeeve. He is a magician's apprentice and wannabe thief. Garkin is his teacher, and he's murdered. Skeeve sets out on a quest to get even. He is joined by Az, a green-scaled, purple-tongued demon and magician who was summoned by Garkin. The road to vengeance is quite rocky because Skeeve can barely light a candle with his beginning magic, and Az has lost his own considerable magic abilities as a consequence of Garkin's summoning spell. Before they can confront the power-mad wizard who ordered Garkin's assassination, they must survive a trip into a weird alternate dimension, encounters with impish hitmen, and a somewhat dull but persistent demon hunter who rides a friendly war unicorn. Here is a short clip to give you an idea of the storyline.
To lift metal took effort. To maneuver a feather required subtlety. Of the two, I preferred to work with metal. I could see a more direct application of that skill in my chosen profession.
Good enough, lad. Now put it back in the book.
I smiled to myself. This part I had practiced, not because of its potential applications, but because it was fun. The book was lying open on the end of the workbench. I brought the feather down in a long, lazy spiral, allowing it to pass lightly across the pages of the book, and up, in a swooping arc, stopped it, and brought it back. As it approached the book the second time, I disengaged part of my mind to dart ahead to the book. As the feather crossed the pages, the book snapped shut like the jaws of a hungry predator, trapping the missile within its grasp. Intoned Garkin. A trifle showy, but effective. Just a little something I worked up when I was practicing, I said casually, reaching out with my mind for the other lizard bird leg. Instead of floating gracefully to my waiting hand, however, it remained on the wooden platter as if it had taken root. Not so fast, my little sneak thief. So, you've been practicing, eh? He stroked his beard thoughtfully with the half-gnawed bone in his hand. Certainly. Didn't it show? It occurred to me that Garkin is not as easy to fool as it sometimes seems. In that case, I'd like to see you light your candle. It should be easy if you've been practicing as much as you claim. I have no objections to trying, but, as you have said yourself so many times, some lessons come easier than others. Although I sounded confident, my spirits sank as the large candle came floating to the work table in response to Garkin's summons. In 4 years of trying, I was yet to be successful at this particular exercise. If Garkin was going to keep me from food until I was successful, I could go hungry for a long time. Say, Garkin, it occurs to me I could probably concentrate better on a full stomach. It occurs to me that you're stalling. Couldn't I? Now, Skeeve. There was no swaying him once he used my proper name. That much I had learned over the years. Lad, thief, idiot, turnip head. Though derogatory, as long as he used one of these, his mind was still open. Once he reverted to using my proper name, it was hopeless. It is indeed a sorry state when the sound of your own name becomes a knell of doom. Well, if there was no way around it, I'd just have to give it my best shot. For this, there could be no half-effort or feigned concentration. I would have to use every ounce of my strength and skill to summon the power. I studied the candle with a detached mind, momentarily blanking the effort ahead from my consciousness. The room, the cluttered workbench, Garkin, even though my own hunger faded from view as I focused on the candle, though I had long since memorized its every feature. It was stout, nearly 6 inches across to stabilize its 10-inch height. I had carved numerous mystic symbols into its surface, copied painstakingly from Garkin's books at his direction, though many of them were partially obliterated by hardened rivulets of wax. The candle had burned many long hours to light my studies, but it had always been lit from a taper from the cooking fire and not from my efforts. Negative thought, stop it. I will light the candle this time. I will light it because there is no reason I should not. Consciously deepening my breath, I began to gather the power. My world narrowed further until all I was aware of was the curled, blackened wick of the candle. I am Skeeve. My father has a farmer's bond with the earth. My mother was an educated woman. My teacher is a master magician. I am Skeeve. I will light this candle.
To say that these stories are fun is quite an understatement. The predicaments that Skeeve gets into are outrageous and at times quite humorous. All in all, a very fun book to both read and, in our case, listen to. I highly recommend this story. Now, if that appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories and you can have another fine myth for free. Here is what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out the service. This also grants you access to the included catalog, which is updated constantly with new titles. So, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for more of your stories.
These are your stories, special edition.
Welcome to These Are Your Stories. You might be asking, how is this different from the other segment? The answer is simple. These are special. But what makes them that way? Again, the answer is simple. They deserve special treatment. It may be the content of the story or how the story was obtained. Or it could be that the storyteller himself or herself is actually here in person. No matter the how, why, or where, what you'll hear in this segment is going to be special. Our special story for this time comes from Ireland, and more specifically, Ballintoy. This is a small village on the northern coast of Ireland. It was sent in by James Walsh via a Reddit post, and James has titled it Encounter by the Sea. I thought this one deserved some special treatment, and I think you're going to agree. Here is James's story. In Ireland, you're never far from the sea. I'm used to my proximity to the water in a way I imagine many of you aren't, due simply to geography. I was born on the northern coast of Ireland, technically Northern Ireland, near Ballycastle, a small town up there. Like most coastal towns, our part of the world comes alive in the summer with people from all over. But in winter, it's quite barren and isolated. Unlike most people, it's that time of year, beginning late autumn and running through the middle of spring, that I enjoy the sea the most. There's something special about having access to sprawling beaches all to oneself. Even on dull days, the roar of the sea in all its expanse calms me, particularly at dawn and dusk, when the light of the sky makes the water glimmer with a mystery that can't be characterized. My story begins and ends with the sea. Before I begin, I'd like to give you a brief rundown of Selkie, or Selkie lore. Selkies are a type of being, legend has it, who inhabit the seas around the northern British Isles, although they can be traced as far as Iceland. The sea north of Ireland is inhabited by seals, and it isn't uncommon to see a colony of them, or perhaps an individual, further out from the towns. I don't know if there exists an animal more charming than the seal, with its lively bark and smiling face so like that of a human. The Selkie takes the form of a seal, but it's really a being with the ability to remove its coat and take on human-like form. Traditionally, tales speak of Selkies appearing as beautiful women, but if you delve deep into the folklore, Selkies appear in all kinds of human forms. Legend has it that they appear in groups on moonlit beaches at certain times of the year, far from human eyes. Here, they remove their seal coats and take on their human-like bodies, dancing with jubilance to music under the light of the moon before eventually returning to the sea. It sounds like a very innocent myth, but there is a darker side to the Selkie. Ireland is not a large country, so relatively speaking, you can never be too far from humanity and civilization. If misfortune strikes and a human catches sight of a group of Selkies, they will dart to their coats and make their way back to the sea without any hesitation. If, however, the human takes hold of one of the coats, their skin, then the Selkie is bound to him. The silky cannot return home without this. Consequently, stories tell of men taking selkies as wives, keeping the sealskin hidden away. The silky will never stop longing for its home and family, but it will be trapped in the home of their captor for the remainder of their lives unless they're able to recapture their coat. Most would never succeed in doing so. Like most myths, I would have taken silkies with a pinch of salt. That is, until I was 17 and had my own experience that is really unexplainable unless we place some credence on silky lore. As I say, I was born by the coast. Teenage life can be challenging for anyone, but for me it was amplified by being a queer person in a very small community. It wasn't easy, but I found some solace in nature, which, as I said, provided me with headspace at times when I needed it more than anything. Ironically, the best tonic for my sense of isolation was isolation. Self-built on those evenings when I could walk 10 minutes to the beach and enjoy the setting sun, which made the water glisten with hope and that unexplainable sense of mystery. I spent hours down there, particularly on those cold days when contact with other people would be minimal. Mostly there wouldn't be much to say about these evenings. I would walk and walk and walk and eventually begin to switch off. Not terribly exciting, but steady and constant. There was this one evening, however, when my path took a different turn. There was a section of the beach that was somewhat shrouded by dunes and rocks. A quiet cove a few miles down from where I started at. We were deep in the spring at this point. I knew it because I never could have made it this far along the beach in the winter months when daylight is minimal. I was trying to maximize my time here before the tourist season began, and the area would begin to fill with people from all over. On the beach there, I was stricken by the sight of what looked to be a young woman. The light was beginning to dim, and the sea had a purple hue. She was strewn out on the sand, her form slender and gentle. It would have been somewhat unusual to see someone this far out along the beach at this time of year, but not altogether shocking. What was shocking is that she was entirely naked, not with a single item of clothing in sight either on her body or near the sand. Although winter had ended, the Irish spring is hardly warm. It isn't rare for snow to fall as late as March and April. And the wind, particularly by the sea, well, it's biting at times and relentless. You can understand my shock upon seeing this naked figure on the beach that day. What made it more bewildering was the body appeared to glimmer. It was as if she was formed from a matter related to the sea, which gleamed in much the same way. Her pale skin imitated its hue, moving softly with the sun to create something that transfixed me. Now, ordinarily, I would have been deeply embarrassed by the nudity. After all, I was an awkward 17-year-old from rural Ireland. But this was different. In the same way the sea at this time of day calmed me and soothed me, it was as though she somehow inspired the same effect, even magnified it. I lost track of the time I spent in that spot. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I stood staring at what I thought was a naked woman for any amount of time. But I can only be honest. And then it was over. She opened her eyes suddenly and turned to look at me with a shocked look on her face. Those eyes, I remember, were striking even from a distance. They were gray, but startlingly so, almost sinking into the whiteness that surrounded them like watercolor and piercing despite the lack of hue. Her entire form was pale, a glistening shape that melded together and appeared translucent in the dimming light. She quickly and soundlessly rose to her feet and moved with sharp fluidity to the rocks nearby. Still frozen, I watched as she emerged carrying what looked like a silvery piece of cloth. I say cloth, but it didn't move in the wind, which was blowing in from the sea. She carried it effortlessly, at a fast pace, her eyes staring intently at me the entire time. When she reached the sea, she stepped into the water with the coat and disappeared into the waves. At this, I shook myself back to life and moved towards the shore itself. Much as I tried, I couldn't make out her form anywhere. She had vanished into the roaring water soundlessly and without any physical trace. I was bemused but exhilarated. I remained there for around 10 minutes more before making my way home. The images of the evening etched into my mind for the duration of the walk, which was guided by the light of the now fully risen moon. My parents were frustrated when I reached my house, upset that I had been out much longer than they had expected, but their words seemed to drift over my head. I was quiet as a teenager, and I imagine it wasn't too surprising to them that I didn't have much to say, no matter their frustration. I didn't speak to anyone at the time about what I'd encountered on that evening. Being a bit of an outcast already, I hardly wanted to appear even odder, and it would be a few years before I found a group of friends whom I could mull these thoughts over with. I did, however, spend the next few weeks burying myself in online literature about anything that could have been connected to the image of the woman on the beach. I came across silky stories and immersed myself in silky lore. Although it didn't entirely match what I had seen, it was the only mythos that I could find that was somewhat similar. I returned to that beach many times, especially in summer when daylight was much more generous. It saddens me that I have never come across that being that I had seen on that night. On one occasion, however, I had resigned myself to walking back home when I heard a bark coming from the shore. I was delighted to see 3 silvery seals in the water a few meters out into the sea. They moved playfully, their voices filling the air. It struck me that one of them, a little smaller than the other 2, was looking at me watchfully, its eyes intent. The light of the setting sun hit its body, which sparkled with its rays. Then I smiled back, waving slightly. James Walsh, Ballantoy, UK. Well, James, that is truly an amazing and wonderfully written story. Our myths, legends, and horror stories come from history, which was done mostly by word of mouth, songs, poems, etc. These were always taught as lessons to guide us. They had to come from someone who saw something that left an impression, enough to make it part of our lore. What did you see? Well, I live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm always looking for Bigfoot when I go to the forests and mountains. I've heard things that I can't explain, but I've never seen anything. So who knows? Thank you for sharing your story. Our featured story comes from the OTR series, the Hallmark Hall of Fame. It features almost the entire cast of Gunsmoke, which shouldn't come as any real surprise since Hallmark was part of the CBS family. Even the music from this one comes directly from Gunsmoke. What we're going to hear is a tale about the famous Western lawman, Wyatt Earp. It isn't like anything you've seen or heard before. The real Wyatt Earp was a gambler, brothel owner, and side street brawler. This version is just a bit different from that, but maintains that mystic sense that he was a very tough man. The story is titled Wyatt Earp, Marshal of Kansas, and it first aired on CBS December 12, 1954.
From Hollywood, the makers of Hallmark cards bring you a true story from the life of Wyatt Earp on the Hallmark Hall of Fame. And here's our distinguished host, Edward Arnold.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hallmark Hall of Fame. Tonight, our true story is transcribed from the life of one of America's most fabulous and courageous law enforcement officers, the famous Marshal and Sheriff of the early West, Wyatt Earp. Now, Wyatt Earp was more than a Western gunslinger, more than a fast man on the draw. He was directly responsible, perhaps more than any other person, for bringing law and order to the West. And our story tonight will tell you how it all began. Wyatt Earp was born on March the 19th, 1848, at Monmouth, Illinois. In 1864, his family migrated further west, and young Wyatt became first a stagecoach driver, then part owner of a wagon freight line, next a guide for a government surveying party, and finally, in the early 1870s, a successful buffalo hunter. One evening in the spring of 1873, Wyatt and his partner, Brad Eben, returned to their camp where they pegged out the skins from the day's kill to dry.
Big fellow, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Skin like this might bring $5. Too bad we ain't got more like him.
We've done all right, Brad.
Oh, sure we have. Well, sure we have. Not as good as last year, though. I've been doing some figuring. We're averaging about 4 animals a day less this go-round.
Uh-huh.
Of course, next year will probably be better. I expect there's ups and downs in buffalo killing like everything else.
There won't be any next year, Brad. Leastways, not for me.
Huh?
Other herds are thinning out, and they're a lot harder to find, too. Next fall, most of the hunters will lose money. After that, well, won't be very long before the animals are as scarce as hen's teeth.
Oh, there'll always be buffalo, Wyatt. Why, we've seen them to the south. They couldn't just be wiped off the face of the earth no matter what.
Maybe not, Brad. Maybe not. That's how I see it.
Well, if you ain't going to hunt buffalo, what are you going to do?
I don't know.
Now you're not going to do nothing foolish like get yourself married and start raising a family.
I've been married.
What?
Oh, we weren't together very long. There was a typhus epidemic.
I'm sorry, Wyatt. I just never thought that... Well, you don't seem like the marrying type to me.
I'm not. Not now, anyhow.
You ever think of going back to stage driving or hauling freight?
Oh, that was all right when I was a kid before the railroads came through. No, by the time we sell these skins out, it's going to be worth a couple of $1,000. Now, there's lots of money being made in cattle these days. Folks driving their herds up from Texas.
Well, you just take my advice and stay away from them Kansas cattle towns, Wyatt.
Oh, what do you mean?
You get mixed up with them cowboys and them wide-open birds, and the first thing you know, you'll be using that six-gun of yours. Oh, I'm not denying that you're mighty handy with it. But you ain't got the temperament to be a gunfighter.
Now, Brad, I got no intention of being a gunfighter.
Well, you get to hanging out where they hang out, and it'll rub off. Sure as fate, it'll rub off on you.
Well, man's got to do something. He's got to go somewhere.
He don't have to go to them Kansas cattle towns.
All right, Brad. Since you're so concerned when I go east, I won't wear my guns. That ought to cut down my chances of getting into trouble.
Yeah, you'll put 'em on fast enough. Mark my word, Wyatt, you'll put 'em on.
A short time later, Wyatt Earp drifted into the town of Ellsworth, Kansas. At the time, Ellsworth was one of the northern shipping centers for the Texas cattle herds, and over 150,000 head grazed on nearby prairies while awaiting shipment further east. With the cattle were 1,000 impatient, swaggering, gun-belted cowboys. On the afternoon of August 18th, as Wyatt slowly crossed the plaza, he was met by Ben Thompson, one of the leaders of the Texas contingent. Ben carried a loaded shotgun, and with him were some 10 or 12 carmen.
Hey, hold on there. Where do you think you're going? Anywhere I'm a mind to. Yeah? Well, it just might be we've got a mind to tell you. Hey, it's Wyatt, ain't it? Wyatt Earp? That's right. Hello, Ben. Yeah. What you doing around here? Oh, just passing through.
You know him, Ben?
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. Well, go ahead, Wyatt. Go on about your business. It's all right with me. I didn't ask you whether it was all right or not, Ben. I don't know any reason why I should. Howdy. Store's closed for the day, mister. Better come back tomorrow. It's pretty early to be closing up, isn't it? That's my business, ain't it? Oh, sure. You mind telling me what's going on out there? Why didn't you ask your friend, Ben Thompson? Well, I met up with Ben here and there, played cards with him, but that doesn't make him my friend. He said you was. I heard him say so. Oh, you didn't hear me say so. You mean you ain't from Texas? California. Well, I might have figured you wasn't no cowboy, seeing as how you was bare-hipped. I sure do apologize for the mistake, Mr. Earp. Wyatt Earp. Oh, my name's Beebe. Ben shot the sheriff? No, it was Ben's kid brother, Bill. There was an argument over at Brennan's Saloon. The Thompsons and a fellow they were playing poker with. Sheriff Whitney tried to quiet him, and Bill Thompson cut him down point blank. I ain't heard yet. Where did Bill go? Oh, he hightailed it out of town. Ben took his shotgun to cover him, and he's been standing out there ever since, daring somebody to go after Bill. Oh, them fellas out there, they're just looking for an excuse to tree Ellsworth the way they've treed all the other cow towns. I never should have put in that plate glass. I knowed it when I ordered it. Uh-huh. Well, I guess I'll be moving on. Oh, you got any special place to go, son? No. No special place. Well, if you'd like to earn a little change, you can give me a hand here. I'm making up some burying boxes. I'll pay you 2 bits a box. Well, that sounds like a fair price. How many you want? As many as you can make till this pile of lumber gives out anyway. We'll need 'em before the day's out. I tell you, we'll need 'em.
Half hour, Ben Thompson roved up and down the plaza shouting threats and defying the decent citizens of Ellsworth. No one had yet attempted to disarm him and his cowboy allies.
Hey, what are you waiting for? Come on out and open somebody. Give us a little target practice.
Inside the store, Wyatt Earp and George Beebe were joined by Mayor Jim Miller and Deputy Marshal Happy Jack Marco, a hired Indian fighter and a 6-gun expert.
I'm not going to put up with this nonsense any longer, Jack. Now, you go out there and you lay down the law. Why, they'd shoot me down before I got my mouth open. A man would be plumb loco to set a foot outside that door.
I walked past Thompson a little while ago. He didn't bother me.
Well, you ain't a deputy marshal.
Now, that's true. I'm not.
Jack, I'm tired of arguing with you. And I'm tired of listening. You want to arrest Ben Thompson? Arrest him yourself.
All right. Guess I'll have to. There just don't seem to be anybody else to do it.
Don't stand in front of the window, Jim. Ben?
This is the mayor.
Howdy, Mayor.
Ben, now, I'm ordering you to lay down that gun. Ben, I'm ordering you now to submit to arrest.
He wants me to submit to arrest. Get away from the window, Jim. Mr. Mayor, here's what we think of your order.
Look out for the plate glass!
Hey, come on, let's go down and get a drink.
Oh, I asked you to get away from my window. Will you stop yammering about that, George? You could have killed me just then. If he'd have wanted to. You do a lot of talking, mister. Well, that's about all anybody's doing, isn't it? Who are you, anyway? Just a bystander. My name's Wyatt Earp. Never heard of you.
Well, he knows Ben Thompson. Stood up to him, too. Just before you got here, Jim. Stood up to him right out there in the street, just as big as life.
That's so. I guess he wasn't taking much of a risk, seeing as how he ain't wearing a gun. Well, I don't see where your gun's been much help, Jack. Now, just give them cowboys a few hours to get some of the devilment out of their bones, and by morning, everything will be peaceful again. Maybe. But that won't stop them from killing your next sheriff any time they got a mind to. How, would you go about stopping him, Earp? I'd arrest him, or I'd kill him. Okay? Go ahead. What do you think you're pulling, Jim? He ain't got the right to arrest nobody. I'm the deputy marshal. Oh, you're fired, Marco. Give me your badge. Hand it over. Well, all right, Jim. But who's going to wear it after Earp gets himself killed? That ain't your worry. Well, I'll be around back when you want me. All right, Mr. Earp. Here's your badge. You're the marshal now. And I'm ordering you to arrest Ben Thompson. George, fix him up with some guns.
Right over here, son. Now, take your pick. That there pair in front of brand new is supposed to be the finest set ever to come this way.
You, got any second-hand 45s?
Oh, yeah. This pair here, but,
trigger dog's been filed on them?
I ain't certain about that. Just a second. Well, it seems as though they have. Sure do work smooth.
Can I try them?
Oh, sure.
Uh-huh. Hey, yeah, they'll do.
Oh, here's some cartridges.
Oh, thank you. I'll need a belt, too.
Oh, sure. I don't know what I was thinking about. Well, this one may be a mite large.
What? No, that's fine.
You must be something bigger than you look.
Well, son, you all set? Yeah. Where do you want me to bring him? Thompson, where do you want him? Oh, well, I guess Judge Osborne's court. That's right around the corner. Yeah, you better bring him there if you arrest him. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Good luck. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute, son.
What?
You ain't going out there that way with your guns in them holsters.
Well, that's where I usually wear my guns. Ben! Over here, Ben!
Wyatt?
Yeah.
I told you to go on about your business, Wyatt.
Well, I want to talk to you.
Want to talk to him? Then go talk to him. You looking for trouble?
No, I'm looking for you. You're under arrest, Ben.
Let me take you some, boy. Oh, shut up, man.
Wyatt, stay where you are.
Ben, I'm going to arrest you or I'm going to kill you.
I told you to stay where you was.
Throw down your gun.
Hey, Wyatt, there's at least 15 of us here. Wouldn't be enough left of you to bother burying.
Well, I might manage to take a little company with me. You, Ben, I'd take you along. And you too, Cat. I figure on including you.
Come on, Ben, we'll back you up. You're almighty eager, ain't you, seeing us me standing out here in front of you? Shut up.
All right, Earp. Make your play. I got no play to make. I'm just putting you under arrest.
Go on, I tell you, go for your guns.
I'll go for 'em when I need 'em. Now, either you use that shotgun or you throw it down. Throw it down, Benton.
Yes, I do. The fellas over there in the store cut me down.
If they try that, they'll have to shoot it out with me first. Now, drop it.
Okay, Wyatt, you're calling the turn.
Now, rest of you, stay out of this. Now, I want your 6 guns, too, Ben.
Why, sure. Here.
Thank you. All right, the judge is waiting. Let's go.
Order can be restored, I'll be obliged to adjourn this court.
Judge, will you hold on a minute?
All right.
Don't try it, Cad. Now listen. Ben's gonna stay in jail until he's had a trial. Anybody who doesn't like the idea is welcome to join him.
A trial or a lynch?
Yeah!
I said a trial. Now, you're making too much noise, so start moving. I said start moving.
Come on, now wait.
Very well. Now that some dignity has been restored, we can proceed. What's the charges? All right, speak up. What's the charges?
Well, Your Honor, I guess taking part in a murder. I guess that's the charge.
Accessory to homicide. Is that what you mean, Mr. Earp?
Well, yes, sir.
All right, now who are the witnesses? Come now, the witnesses. Did anybody see this crime?
No.
Well, Mr. Earp, did you see it?
No, sir, I didn't see it, but I was told...
What you were told is not evidence, Mr. Earp.
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
I think, under the circumstances, well, since it was Ben's brother who did the actual shooting, I think the charges ought to be, say, disturbing the peace.
Very well, Mayor Miller. Charge of accessory to a homicide is dismissed. The accused is found guilty of disturbing the peace and is hereby fined $25.
But what about my window?
And is ordered to pay Mr. Beebe the cost of one plate glass window. The court's adjourned.
Is that all? Well, then here's your $25, Jen.
I'll take care of it, Mr. Thompson.
Why, sure. Now, say, what about my guns? Don't I get them back? Yes, certainly. The marshal will return them to you.
Oh, well?
Yes, that's the law, Earp. When a man's paid his fine, he gets his property back.
Oh. All right, then.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Oh, just a minute.
Yeah.
Don't put him on in here. Law or no law, don't put 'em on until you're out of my sight. Why, sure. I'm sorry you had so much trouble, Earp. For $25, it don't hardly seem worth it. Well, I won't be needing this badge any longer. Oh, now, hold on, Earp. You mustn't think we don't appreciate what you done, but after all, you really wasn't guilty of murder. Sure. One thing, though, you really proved yourself. We, all want you to stay on here as Marshal. Permanent.
That's right, Earp. Yep, you're our man.
Well, that's mighty kind of you, gentlemen. As a matter of fact, this business today has sort of decided things for me. Up until now, I didn't know just what I wanted to do for a living, but, well, now I sort of think I might like the idea of being a lawman. A friend of mine told me I'd be putting on my guns, but I don't think he'd mind this way. Well, everything's going to work out fine. The only thing is, I wouldn't care to enforce the law here in Ellsworth.
What? I don't understand.
We'll pay you $100 a month. Well, the salary's all right for a live sheriff, but you folks seem to figure a dead sheriff's only worth $25. Nah, I figured different. And I guess maybe I can find other towns that agree with me. So long.
And so Wyatt Earp refused the job of Marshal of Ellsworth. But he had chosen his career, and he soon found law enforcement jobs he was willing to accept. Deputy Marshal of Wichita, Kansas, Marshal of Dodge City, Deputy Sheriff of Tombstone, and Deputy United States Marshal. No sheriff of the year has so successfully brought law and order to the towns and states he served. Long after the notorious outlaws he had outshot or outwitted were forgotten, Wyatt Earp, at the age of 81, died peacefully in his home. But he had left behind a clear road for America, a trail leading west.
Now, here's Edward Arnold.
Well, tonight we told a dramatic moment in the history of the Old West. Incidentally, Wyatt Earp was played by William Conrad, who stars in the famous radio series Gunsmoke as Matt Dillon. Next week, we travel to England and to the 18th century on the Hallmark Hall of Fame. It'll be a true story from the life of one of England's greatest actresses, Sarah Siddons. And our star will be the charming and brilliant Miss Helen Hayes.
And the following week is another special event, I believe.
That's right, Frank. On December 19th, we will be proud to bring, just as he performed it on the Hallmark Hall of Fame, Lionel Barrymore in his famous portrayal of Scrooge in Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. We are indeed honored to help continue this beloved Christmas tradition. This is Edward Arnold saying good night until next week. Won't you join us then?
Look for Hallmark cards that are sold only in stores that have been carefully selected to give you expert and friendly service. Remember, a Hallmark card when you care enough to send the very best. The Hallmark Hall of Fame is produced and directed by William Krug. Tonight's transcribed script by Frank Burke. Included in our cast were Polly Bear, Herb Weigland, Lawrence Dobkin, Harry Bartell, Joseph Kearns, Paul Duboff, and Paul Freed. William Conrad is heard every Saturday on Gunsmoke over CDS Radio, brought to you by L&M Filter Cigarettes. This is Frank Goss saying goodnight to you until next week at the same time, when you'll hear a true story from the life of Sarah Siddons, starring Miss Helen Hayes on the Hallmark Hall of Fame. This is the CBS Radio Network.
Well, that surely was not your Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp. It was something much, well, more tame and moral, and I'm pretty sure didn't have a shred of truth to it. Although history does record that he was a buffalo hunter for a very short time. Hallmark Playhouse was an old-time radio dramatic anthology series. It was broadcast on CBS from 1948 until 1953. It was described by one author as a program that constantly produced the highest levels of production quality and value. Beginning on February 8, 1953, the program underwent changes of title, host, and format. It was broadcast as the Hallmark Hall of Fame until March 27, 1955, still on CBS. The show was hosted by the great Lionel Barrymore until his death in November of 1954. The series ended a few weeks later. Sad, too, because it truly was a quality program and received several prestigious awards. There are only 39 surviving episodes left for us to enjoy. Also, kinda sad.
Not so important times in history.
In this segment, we take a look at historical events that may otherwise go unnoticed. We look at history with a fish-eyed lens, giving a perspective that should provide no insight to anyone or any time. But it is historical, or hysterical, as the case may be. Join us now for this event in history. On September 22, 1773, a letter appeared in the Public Advertiser, which is a London newspaper, complaining that England was being forced to take deported French prisoners. It was a long, drawn-out dissertation that ended with these words. And lastly, being willing to further our favor with said colonies in Britain, we do hereby also ordain and command that all the thieves, highway and street robbers, housebreakers, forgers, murderers, and villains of every denomination who have forfeited their lives to the law in Prussia, but whom we, in our great clemency, do not think fit to hang here, they shall be emptied out of our gallows and into the said island of Great Britain for the bettering of the people of that country. It was signed by Frederick II, King of Prussia. The British, of course, were furious and wanted it stopped. The French became upset because the uproar implied that England was too good for their prisoners. Both governments became involved, and they were on the brink of war before it was unraveled as a hoax. The original letter, it was learned, had been written by Benjamin Franklin, who was spending 6 months in England as an ambassador and was simply bored. He just was stirring up trouble and sitting back and watching. How about that? Well, that was episode number 583. I hope you enjoyed it. James Walsh sent in our story today, and Brandon Hammer suggested the history lesson. My thanks to you both. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button helps us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's amazing stories.